Key points in this video. Patients with PTSD often develop persistent negative beliefs about themselves after traumatic events, or have existing negative beliefs reinforced. The techniques available to help patients challenge their negative beliefs include Continua, positive data logs, and the prejudice model. These techniques are used in conjunction with work on updating trauma memories and are especially useful for patients who have very generalised negative beliefs about themselves. For example, following repeated negative experiences in childhood or adulthood. Continua encourage patients to challenge their black and white thinking and see things in an alternative way. In this video, you will see part of a session in which the therapist is helping the patient explore and address her negative beliefs about herself. Anita was raped when she was 19 years old on the way home from a party. She developed strong beliefs about herself since this trauma, including, "I am unlikable." Anita and her therapist had started working on this belief in therapy using cognitive restructuring and completing a survey. Here we see the therapist review Anita's current rating and her negative self-belief before introducing the Continuum method. The therapist then helps Anita identify an alternative belief that can be developed as a first step.
Okay, so perhaps we could check in then, Anita, where you are with those beliefs that we've been talking about. Sort of, how are you feeling about yourself since what happened at the moment?
I've been feeling a bit better, but I'm definitely still feeling very unlikable, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that belief around being unlikable is still around.
Yeah.
I know it's a really difficult question, but can I ask you kind of, if I was to ask you to rate it between 0 and 100, where would it be at the moment, do you think? How much do you believe it to be true?
Maybe about 80%, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So it sounds like it's an important thing that we continue to work on. I'm wondering if we could spend a bit more time on that today.
Sure, yeah.
So perhaps, Anita, we could start by sort of thinking really what the opposite is of being unlikable for you. What does, for you personally, what does it mean? What's the opposite of being unlikable?
Likeable, I guess.
Yeah, that would make sense, absolutely. Okay. And when we say likeable, what do you really mean by that? What do you think it means to be likeable?
I don't know. I've really thought about it. I don't know, yeah.
I guess it's not something we really sit down and think about,
No,
is it?
yeah.
So let's perhaps do that now. So let's just think, what comes to mind of what it means for you to be likeable?
Okay. I guess one bit of it might be like being caring, like make you likeable. So if you like care for the people and you are there for them and like help them out and listen to them, like that kind of stuff, I think would probably make you quite likeable. Okay, so it sounds like lots of different things there. Yeah.
And they all sound like really important things and really kind of for you what it means to be likeable. So before I write that down, I guess could I sort of ask you to rate how much you believe you're likeable?
Okay.
Sort of right now, sort of between 0 and 100. If 0 is not at all, 100 is extremely. Where would you put yourself at the moment?
I think probably about 20%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll just write that up in a moment, and then maybe I could write down a list of all of those other things that you said means to be likeable.
Yeah, sure.
Because then I want to sort of to do an exercise from that.
Okay.
Okay. So. Okay.
The therapist writes down what Anita has suggested it means to be likeable. The therapist then helps Anita to identify further qualities using Socratic questioning, and these are also written on the board. For Anita, these qualities are being caring, being reliable, being considerate, and having a good sense of humour. The therapist then introduces the idea of rating each quality on a continuum. The therapist asks where the patient would put other people on the continuum for each quality. Once the patient has placed people at both ends of the continuum, they are then asked where they would put themselves.
Okay, so Anita, we've done really well and kind of come up with some really key things about what you think it means for you to be likeable.
Yeah.
I wonder if that we could take it to the next step then of sort of putting some of these qualities onto a scale now.
Okay.
So for example, if I, with this first one of being caring, kind of do this on a scale from say 0, where 0 would mean not at all caring,
Sure.
And at this other end, it would be sort of 100, meaning extremely caring.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
And maybe we could sort of put some people on this scale and see where we're up to.
Okay.
So, for example, can you think of anyone who's kind of towards this end, perhaps, who's really extremely caring? Anyone you know personally, or somebody famous, or who comes to mind?
I mean, immediately comes to mind is probably like Mother Teresa.
Mm-hmm.
She was obviously really caring and stuff.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Where would you put Mother Teresa on this? I mean, if I can give you that pen, where would you put her as?
I mean, she's got to be 100, really. Right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
should I put an X?
Yeah. Yeah. Good idea.
There.
And-
Mother Teresa.
Yep. Yeah, she was very well known, very nurturing, caring.
She gave her
person.
whole life, didn't she, for the
Yeah.
people that kind of sacrifice.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what about anyone you know a bit more personally? Anyone out of your family or friends who comes to mind who's sort of more towards that end, perhaps?
Well, my sister's really caring, actually.
Mm-hmm.
She's a nurse and she's got her kids and she's really caring about them. Yeah.
Okay. So where would you put her on that scale, do you think?
Probably put her around 80. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Around 80? Yeah, please do.
80,
Wherever you think
about
80 is.
there.
Yeah.
Put my sister.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. 80.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. What about more this end? Sort of who comes to mind when you think about someone who's really uncaring, so not at all caring? Who comes to mind? Anyone famous or anyone you know personally?
So it's a bit weird, but I was talking about this with my friend yesterday.
Mm.
And actually, apparently Christian Bale is really horrible, like to his staff members and stuff.
Oh, right.
Well, like he's just not, I think, not very caring. I think is the way I would describe him.
Okay.
Yeah, not very caring about his people and stuff. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry to hear that.
Well,
Sure.
yeah.
Where would you put Christian Bale on this then?
I mean, I'm sure, I don't know him. I'm sure he does care about some people.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
maybe like a 10.
Okay.
Yeah, like a
Okay.
10. Yeah.
Sure.
Over here, 10.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And anyone else you know in your personal life who you'd say is perhaps more this end, sort of not very caring?
I've got a colleague actually, who isn't very she's not really a team player very much. She doesn't really care about the rest of the team, I think, sometimes. So I'd say her, yeah.
Okay, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Where would you put her, do you think?
She's probably about 40.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, brilliant. So we've got a real kind of mixture there of a couple of people who sort of more this end and sort of not being very caring. So Christian Bale,
Yeah.
and your colleague.
Yeah.
But then at the other end, we've got sort of your sister around 80 and Mother Teresa,
Yeah.
who's around 100 on the caring scale. So can I give you this pen now, Anita, and ask you to put where you think you are? And thinking about, as we've got this definition of listening to people, giving them support, being there for other people, where would you put yourself, do you think, out of 100?
I mean, I think I'm probably nicer than my colleague is.
Yeah.
But my sister's really great. I don't think I'm at her level.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I could be halfway. I could be about 60. Yeah.
Okay, sure. So do you want to put yourself on
Sure.
The therapist and Anita then repeat this way of placing people on the continuum for each quality. The patient is asked to summarise progress so far, and the scores are reviewed.
So looking at where we're up to now, Anita. So what have you learned from doing this? Where have you put yourself? Let's talk a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I've put myself quite high actually. They're sort of all between 60 and 80, which is higher than I thought they'd be.
Okay, that's interesting. And if we look back at the top, how you rated yourself as being likeable at the start was 20%. And as you said, actually, when we've broken that down of what it means to you to be likeable, we've actually put it more, higher, between 60 and 80. And what do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really make sense, does it? Like, they're very different schools. Yeah.
So what's going on there, do you think? What do you make of that?
I think maybe I could increase my top score.
Okay.
I don't think it's 60 to 80%, but maybe it's more like 40%.
Okay.
Really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, so doing this exercise, it sounds like actually maybe it's increased a bit how much you believe that you're likeable from about 20 to 40.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah,
And I'm wondering, how does that feel emotionally though?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think rationally, like, it obviously does make sense, and it would make sense for it to be, you know, higher, like 70, 80%, but I mean, it doesn't feel that high, definitely. Like, it doesn't feel like I'm that likeable, you know,
Right,
definitely
okay.
sub 50.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it sounds like there's a bit of a mismatch there between what you know in your head and how you feel in your heart.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, I
a
think so.
really common thing that a lot of people have, that actually what we know rationally, as you said,
Yeah.
isn't how we feel emotionally. So, excuse me, I think that's something we've got to keep an eye on, really. And it sounds like there's quite a bit more work we can do here. So that's something I think we need to keep checking in with, of how you're feeling emotionally and how it's feeling in your heart as well as with your head.
Okay, sure, yeah.
There is often a difference between what the patient feels in their heart and what they know in their head. Imagery rescripting or further updating within the memory can be useful techniques to help patients believe the new belief more on an emotional level. Following the continuum method, the therapist can then move on to introducing the idea of keeping a positive data log as a way of building on Anita's more helpful belief that she's likeable. Key points in this video. Patients with PTSD often develop persistent negative beliefs about themselves after traumatic events, or have existing negative beliefs reinforced. This video demonstrated the continuum technique, which aims to help patients challenge their black and white thinking and see things in an alternative way. Continua are completed in session with the therapist. This technique is used in conjunction with updating trauma memories, alongside techniques such as the prejudice model and positive data logs. Techniques such as imagery rescripting can help patients strengthen new beliefs at an emotional level. Further training videos are available on updating trauma memories, the prejudice model, positive data logs, and imagery rescripting.